Want to enjoy the bounty of summer's produce all year long? You can by preserving.
Welcome to Preserving for You. This series will discuss research-backed home food preservation methods. I'm Amber Hurston from Ashley County.
I'm Terry James from Hempstead County. We are with the Cooperative Extension Service of the University of Arkansas System, Division of Agriculture.
Today, we're gonna make salsa. It's a high-acid food. We'll be using boiling water bath canner to process our jars. We have several goals for you today. Number one, we want you to understand how to select a safe canning method for different types of food. We want to make sure that you understand the types of canners that are appropriate for you to use. We want to talk about the common ingredients that are in the salsa, and then how to make sure that you're selecting a safe, research-backed recipe. Then, we'll successfully complete a batch of salsa following those processing steps.
Sounds good.
We got a lot to do. Let's get started.
All right. So, what types of food are high acid? Do you remember the pH level that is the cutoff between high and low acid foods? If you answered 4.6, you are correct. Why do you think foods with a pH greater than 4.6 require pressure canning? Foods with a pH of 4.6 or lower can be processed for preserving with a boiling water bath or steam canned because microorganisms do not grow well in acid environments. The University of Arkansas, the Cooperative Extension Service, does not recommend any specific brand of canner, equipment, or supplies. Items used in our videos are some examples of products that can be purchased in stores and online. So Amber, let's talk.
Want to talk about water bath canning?
Hope so.
Let's talk about it. A water bath canner is simply a large covered cooking pot that has a rack. The rack can either be metal or it could also be a silicone trivet. The silicone trivet is inexpensive and easy to store. The racks are simply for keeping the jars from touching the bottom of the canner. It allows the water to freely move around that jar so that we know that it was processed properly. Any container can be used as long as it is deep enough for 1 inch of briskly boiling water to cover those jars. You need to make sure that the diameter of your canner is no more than 4 inches wider than the diameter of your stove's burner. That's going to make sure that everything is treated properly within our canner. The canner must have that tight-fitting lid and the rack.
Regarding using a steam canner, from the National Center for Home Food Preservation, sufficient studies and peer review have been completed that we are now able to say that as long as certain critical controls at various steps in the canning process are achieved, USDA and the National Center for Home Food Processing, the process times for canning acid or properly acidified foods, pH of 4.6 or below, at home with properly research-based recipes and procedures, it can be used. The University of Wisconsin-Madison conducted research showing that an atmospheric steam canner may be used to safely can naturally acid foods, such as peaches, pears, and apples, or acidified foods such as salsa or pickles. The steam canner uses only 2 quarts of water compared to 16 quarts or more in a boiling water canner. So you heat less water.
Big difference.
And you have less processing. It can start more quickly. They tested 2 types of canners in the laboratory, a back to basics canner and a Victoria model. They are the only 2 types of steam canners that the University of Wisconsin has tested as safe for home canning of acid foods. Other canners have not been tested and are not recommended at this time. Always follow research recipes and measure your ingredients. It's so important.
Right.
Do not remove or change your vegetables in the recipe because doing so alters that pH level. Salsa, it's a mixture of low acid and high acid food. These recipes must meet acidity level requirements to prevent the growth of botulism. The key salsa ingredients are tomatoes, peppers, tomatillas, acids, spices, and other ingredients.
Tomatoes. Tomatoes are a key ingredient in salsa, so let's talk about those. The type and quality can affect your product. So paste tomatoes, such as aroma, have a firmer flesh and produce a thicker salsa than slicing tomatoes. Although both types make good salsa, slicing tomatoes usually are going to yield a more watery salsa. Tomato paste can be added to thicken the salsa. Use only high quality tomatoes for canning. It's a lot of work. We don't want to use the overripe, spoiled, or tomatoes from dead or frost-killed vines. You can substitute green tomatoes or tomatillas for tomatoes in any of the salsa recipes from the USDA Complete Guide for Home Canning, and they're so easy to preserve. But remember, substitutions are going to change the flavor.
So the peppers, these are the fun ones. Do not increase the total amount of peppers in any recipe. However, you may substitute one type of pepper for another. Chili peppers range from mild to fiery in taste. Very hot peppers are usually small, 1 to 3 inches long. Mild peppers are usually bigger, 4 to 10 inches long. Anaheim, Ancho, College, Colorado, and Hungarian yellow wax are mild pepper varieties used when the recipe calls for long green chilies. Small, very hot peppers provide a distinct taste to salsa. Jalapeno is the most popular for hot pepper. Other varieties include serrano, cayenne, habanero, and Tabasco. Use those gloves when you're preparing these types because they irritate the skin and especially the eyes. Absolutely. You can substitute bell peppers for some or all of the long green chilies. You can use canned chilies in place or fresh. When peppers are finely chopped, they do not need to be skinned. The seeds of hot peppers are often removed if you prefer to peel. Use the recommendations from the National Center for Home Food Preservation. Use only high-quality peppers. Do not increase the amount of peppers in any recipe. Tomatillas, they're also known as those Mexican husk tomatoes. They do not need to be peeled or seeded, but remove that dry outer husk. So Amber, the acid.
Acid is a key ingredient here. It's required to prevent the microbial growth. Must be added to salsa because the natural acidity is not high enough to kill that. Lemon juice is more acidic than vinegar, but has less flavor. Use only commercially bottled lemon juice. If you're going to use vinegar, make sure that it is at least 5% acidic. Homemade vinegar is not recommended at all. Also, remember never to substitute vinegar for lemon juice since it has a lower acid. There's potential for those microbials to grow.
Oh, definitely. So your spices, this is where you can add the flavoring to your salsas. The amounts may be altered or left out in these recipes. Cilantro and cumin are often used in spicy salsa. You may leave them out if you prefer that milder salsa taste. For stronger flavors, add fresh herbs before serving, such as cilantro.
Other ingredients are needed as well. We know onions. Onions need to be cut and chopped, but remember not to change the total amount. However, you could change to a red, a yellow, or a white onion. Thickeners. If your salsa is thin, remember you cannot thicken it before you can. No flour, cornstarch, or other starches before you can. Adjust the thickness after you've opened it by either pouring off some of the liquid or adding the thickener then. Salt. Salt is important. It's not required for the preservation. However, it will preserve the flavor and the color of your salsa. So try using a pickling or a canning salt instead of just your regular old table salt. In canning, salt is used again for that flavor and color protection rather than the preservative. So if you're on a low sodium diet, feel free to leave the salt out. Follow any directions carefully for each recipe. Use the amount of each vegetable listed in the recipe. Add the amount of vinegar or lemon juice that's listed. Remember, you can change those spices if you desire.
To select your recipe, use only researched recipes from reliable sources, such as So Easy to Preserve from the University of Georgia, the USDA Guide for Home Food Preservation, or the National Center for Home Food Preservation. Do not alter food products and that acid types or measurements because this changes that pH level. For digital canners, follow your manufacturer's recipe. So Amber, the equipment that we're going to need.
Let's talk about the equipment. You're obviously going to need your jars and lids. Your jars have to be specially heat treated, which causes them to be a tempered glass, which is safe. Remember, pints and quarts are recommended for low acid foods. Half gallon is not recommended. We don't have to sterilize our jars. We just need to hand wash them with hot soapy water. This statement is true because our process time is longer than 10 minutes. If it was less than 10 minutes, you would need to sterilize your jars. Once those jars are clean, we're going to place them in our canner so that they are warming up in the water that's already there. If you don't want to use your water and you've just ran your jars through the dishwasher, feel free to get them out after the drying cycle when they're already warm. It's important that we use warm jars so that we don't take a chance on breaking when we add the hot liquid to them.
Very important.
Metal rings can be reused. If they are rusted or defected though, get rid of them. Traditional metal lids can only be used once. Two-piece metal lids and rings are recommended. Reusable plastic lids with the gasket can also be used as long as you explicitly follow those manufacturer's instructions. Do not reuse commercial manufacturing glass jars for home canning. No matter how tempting it may be, stay away. It's not safe. Research is limited on the wet jars and lids and the extended seal statements. Always gather your ingredients and measure out the right amount that you're going to need before time. This process is called mise en place, which is a French kitchen phrase that means putting it all together and gathering. It refers to the discipline and organization of a good chef. Those are the skills they exhibit while in the kitchen. It's going to help you reduce any risk of a mistake or leaving out an important ingredient.
And that does happen.
It does.
And I've learned a lot by just doing that technique. So the recipe that we are using is from the National Center for Home Food Preservation. Let's get started. Today we are processing tomato salsa with paste tomatoes. Remember, we mentioned the details about paste tomatoes, that they are meatier tomatoes and used a lot in sauces and salsa to create that thick consistency. Always wash your hands, and we suggest you put on an apron. To prepare your ingredients, you need to thoroughly wash tomatoes and peppers with no soap. To peel a tomato, an easy way is to make an X on the bottom of the tomato by scoring it with a paring knife. It makes such a difference at this time. You place the tomato in the boiling water for less than a minute, like blanching. Remove that tomato and plunge it into an ice water bath.
Why do we plunge it?
Well, remember, we want to stop those enzymes from cooking at that time. So then, at that point, it is super easy to remove that skin. You core and chop the tomatoes. When you're working with hot peppers, always wear gloves. We've already removed the seeds and the chopped peppers. If you want a hotter tasting salsa, you need to keep some of the seeds in.
I'm glad we removed ours.
So we're not going to have quite that hot. Then we need to chop the onions, chop the garlic, and carefully measure the quantities of each ingredient. We've prepped our ingredients and have them pre-measured for easy assembly. So Amber, what are we going to do now?
All right, let's get started. Let's look at our recipe. So our recipe actually is going to make 16 to 18 pints.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of salsa. So we're halving our recipe
Sounds
today.
good to me.
So we're going to start with 3.5 quarts of our tomatoes.
All right, and they're going.
And they're going. Then we're going to add in our 2 cups of seeded peppers. The recipe calls for green chilies, but we changed that up and we're going to do some green bell peppers.
Sounds great.
Then you can add our 1/2 cup of jalapeno.
Ooh, that's going to give the heat.
Absolutely, but remember we moved those seeds. Then we're going to put our 2.5 cups of onion.
Got them all nice.
Got them ready to go. Our garlic.
How much?
We have 3 cloves in there.
Okay.
You could add more if you wanted.
Different people, different
Yep.
taste.
And then our lemon juice. Now let's talk about the lemon juice. It's really, really important that you make sure that you use bottled lemon juice, not fresh lemon juice. This is important because of the acidic level. When we use a fresh lemon, there's no way to tell what the actual pH of that lemon is. So that's why we have to use our bought.
Okay.
We're also, in a little while, after we get it going, we'll add our seasonings and our cilantro. But for now, we've got it all going. We're going to bring it to a rolling boil and simmer for 10 minutes.
Sounds great. Ooh, you ready for it to start cooking?
I'm ready. Oh, it's smelling good. Now that we've simmered our 10 minutes, it's time to add our seasonings. So we have a tablespoon of salt, a half a tablespoon of black pepper, a tablespoon of ground cumin, a tablespoon and a half of oregano leaves, and because we love cilantro, we decided to add 3 tablespoons of cilantro. Now that our spices are in, it's time to bring it back up to a boil, and we're going to simmer for an additional 20 minutes.
Do you think it's done?
I do. We followed the steps of our recipe, so it's time to fill our jars.
All right, let's look. Ah, Amber.
Smells delicious.
All right, so let's begin.
All right, so the jars we've already taken out of our warmer. You remember that we had those warming. They're out of the canner, and Miss Terry is going to start filling up our jars. So as we use our funnel and our ladle to scoop it in. Oh, that looks so good. All right, now we're going to pay attention to our headspace. Our headspace was half of an inch for salsa, so it looks like we need a little more. And remember, before you measure, you're going to have to remove your bubbles.
How do I do that? Do you think?
That's it. That's our tool. So we're going to
Okay.
use that end. We don't want to jab too forcefully because that could mess our product up. You just want to easily go down to the bottom, move around, and that will help release any air bubbles that are caught in the product.
Now, one thing I heard was we don't use metal because you said crack.
Absolutely.
So this is plastic.
Absolutely.
All right. So you said headspace?
Headspace is this,
Okay.
remember we talked about it earlier, it's the space between the product and the lid for the jar, and you are spot on.
All
I can
right.
tell you are a canner at home. So as we're dumping this, let's talk about a recap of the ingredients that were in here and the changes, the modifications that we made. We used green bell pepper instead of the chili peppers. And because we enjoy cilantro, we actually added extra of that as well. But remember, we did not change the quantity of peppers or onions, just the type. All right, looks good. So we've got a couple filled now. Our next step is we're going to wipe the rim of our jar. This step is crucial. Very important that you do that so that we get, oh, we haven't got bubbles out of that one yet.
Think we got it?
You test our headspace? Let's test our headspace. Ah, you're on the money, on the mark.
Got it.
So now we're going to take a damp paper towel and simply wipe the rim of the jar off. Now this is important because you don't want any product there that could get in the way of that forming a tight seal. So the next step is to place your flat lid on top, and then you're going to use your ring and finger tight. So it's loose enough that the lid will actually flap during processing to allow the oxygen out, but not too tight.
Right.
For the 2-piece metal lid, it's 2 parts. You have the flat lid and then the metal screw band. That is what we put over the top after we wiped our rim and then tightened fingertip tight with our ring. For plastic reusable lids, make sure that you are explicitly following the manufacturer's directions.
So Amber, we've got all of our jars filled, and guess what?
It's the perfect amount.
All right. So next step?
It's time for the canning.
All right. So now it's time to put these jars actually into the water bath canner. Amber's going to be lifting the jars up, but at the same time, she uses a cloth or something underneath to protect the jar and to prevent it so if it should slip and not break. So let's put it in the canner.
Let's do it.
You need to bring the water to a brisk boil. Some folks call this a rolling boil. Some folks even call it an angry boil. We're going to be placing them into our water bath canner. But if you're using a steam canner, please follow the manufacturer's instructions. If you're using electric canners, follow those manufacturer's instructions. Do not start timing until the correct temperature is reached. So make sure that it is at the boiling or the right temperature. Process for the correct amount of time. The times are based on research that tells how long the product must be heated so that all the food in the jars has reached the temperature needed to destroy those microorganisms. The time varies by food density, the packing liquid, and the pH level. Underprocessing can result in spoiled food, while overprocessing results in overcooked food. For our altitude, our recipe calls for 15 minutes. So Amber, we've been having the salsa in the water bath canner for over 15 minutes, and then we had an additional 5 minutes of cool down. Do you think it's about time to
Absolutely. Let's get them out and see what they look like.
All right.
All right. So for our boiling water bath, turn off the heat at the end of the processing. Make sure that you follow the manufacturer's instructions. Like we talked about at the beginning of the video, there's different pieces of equipment. Just always follow the manufacturer's instructions. Open the canner lid away from your face. Guys, it's going to be hot, lots of steam. Place a towel on the counter and remove jars to a location away from any breeze or draft. Doesn't need to be under your ceiling fan or near an air vent. When lifting the jars from the canner, go straight up and over and down. Remember to have the towel underneath just for some extra protection, and those jars are going to be really hot. Make sure that you're not tilting the jars to remove any excess water. I know it's going to be tempting. You can see there's water here, but we don't want to tilt it. We don't want to touch it because it could interfere with the way that it seals, and that we don't want to break any seal. Cool the jars for 12 to 24 hours undisturbed. Okay, so you see that Miss Terry just pulled out a jar of nothing but water. So we needed an extra jar in the canner to make sure that everything was stable. So that is the reason that we have a jar with absolutely nothing but water inside. We're gonna watch and pay attention and listen, and hopefully soon we'll hear those pops.
So, Amber, what do you think?
They're beautiful. I can't wait to test them, but we're gonna have to let them sit 12 to 24 hours before you disturb them. Once that 24 hours is up, what are we gonna do? Ah, that was a pop. What are we gonna do?
At that point, that's when we're going to actually put them where we need to have them stored, but at the same time, we want to wipe off the lids and, remove any residue. Sometimes jars will have a little bit of a calcium deposit on them. At the same time, it's very important that we label our jars, and that means putting the correct name as far as for folks to know exactly what we have in the product, and the date as far as when you actually did this processing. Those items you want to have so that when you're storing them, you can rotate your jars and keep them at the freshest. So Amber, we've got them all taken care of. What do you think? Are we ready to try some salsa?
I think we are.
All right. So we're going to get some salsa out now. The salsa that we're going to try today is some that we did not process so that we could enjoy it and see what it tasted like prior to canning. So
Totally safe to eat because it was cooked. It just hasn't been processed, so it's not shelf safe.
All right, so we're going to set up for some salsa to try. You want to get the salsa?
Absolutely.
Are you ready? Let's go.
It's delicious.
Especially. And not too much cilantro either. We did good.
It's awesome. So what's our next step?
Well, I guess we need to stop eating, but we have to do cleanup, and this
Yes.
is very important too. So, storing your canner. You need to wash and thoroughly dry your canner, the lid, and the rack after each use. You want to store that canner with crumpled clean paper or paper towels in the bottom and around the rack. This helps to absorb that moisture and prevent the rusting. So, we do have a few frequently asked
We
questions
do.
because some things do happen.
So we were successful today. All of our jars did seal, but what could we do to still enjoy our product if it did not seal?
All right, so if it didn't seal, you can refrigerate and eat within 3 to 4 days, but never force a lid to seal by pressing it down. You need to remove the screw bands, wipe clean, and dry lids. You want to label and date your jars as we mentioned a little bit earlier. You're going to store your jars in a clean, dark, dry place, and do not store jars above 95 degrees. And also, do not store near hot pipes, a range, a furnace, under a sink, in an uninsulated attic, or in direct sunlight.
So what if we had several jars that didn't process? What could we do then?
So you have an option at that point, Amber. So we could either reprocess unsealed jars within 24 hours, or you can freeze some product if you like. That is an option.
So Terry, what are the benefits of following that recommended canning practice?
Well, the most important issues are to avoid foodborne illness, avoid jar breakage, avoid lid failure, and by following those recommended recipes, it provides better tasting and higher quality products. Also, that ability to enjoy and making your own food and sharing with your family and friends.
They do like when we share.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Preserving for You.